So moving ahead, now please mark on your atlas, please see the countries which are very important from your colonial point of view. So please mark Senegal. Senegal is very important. We have Guinea-Bissau is very important. We also have to see Guinea. We have to see Sierra Leone. Then we have Liberia. Then we have Cote d'Ivoire. Then we have to see Ghana. We have to see Togo. We have to see Benin, and we have to mark Nigeria. So these all these countries right from Senegal से लेकर के right from up to Nigeria. So this whole stretch, these countries are extremely important from the point of view of colonial histories, right? So colonial history is there, and these are the areas which were highly exploited by the colonial powers. These areas, right from Senegal up to Nigeria, so these were actually very much exploited. And if you see, you get to know, guys, why I'm saying it has colonial history and they are very important from colonial point of view, because these were the places which were exploited for the trade purposes. If you just want to mark it up, so you see this particular coast, from Sierra Leone to Liberia, you see this Sierra Leone and Liberia. So this particular coast used to be called as Grain Coast. It used to be called as Grain Coast because the colonial powers used to export grains from this area to their respective countries. So these were the areas which were exploited for the grains. Then you have the next coast, this coast of Cote d'Ivoire. This used to be called as Ivory Coast because lots of ivory used to be exported from this place. This was completely exploited by the colonial powers. Then we have Ghana. Ghana coast is called as the Gold Coast. It is called as the Gold Coast because gold used to be exported from that part. And then we have the place which is shared by Togo, Benin, and Nigeria. If you see this particular coast, guys, this used to be called as Slave Coast. Please mark it up. It used to be called as Slave Coast because slaves, the whole slave trade, the slaves used to be exported from that part. Entire the population was captured, and they used to be treated as slaves, and they used to be exported from this part, and the whole trade actually went to the European part. So that's why I'm saying the whole part, this right from Senegal up to Nigeria, this complete entire part was extremely exploited by colonial powers. It used to be exploited. And one more thing I want you to notice, since I'm talking about the colonial exploitations, I want you to see one thing, guys. Have you ever wondered and noticed? You see, there are so many straight lines in the division of Africa, isn't it? Can you see this? These are very straight lines. These are very much straight lines. You can see the whole division. You see, in general, we don't have those kind of these kind of divisions. We have never seen these kind of divisions, right? There are almost like intermixed kind of boundaries. The reason most of the Africa has the straight boundaries is because of the paper partition. The reason for straight boundaries is the paper partition. Paper partition that happened almost in 1884-85, and actually Africa was divided. It was partitioned not on the African land, it was actually partitioned on the paper. So the European colonial powers, so all the European colonial powers, they actually sat down. They never wanted to conflict. Every European power wanted to exploit the resources of Africa. So be it the British or the French or Spanish or Portuguese, or you say any Danish or any colonial power, they never wanted to had any fight for Africa. They want, so that's why they sat down and on a paper they actually demarcated, okay, this land you take, this is the land I'm going to take. So this, they never cared about the tribals of the Africa. They never ever cared about the people's relations with the other places. They never cared about anything. So whatever suited them, they actually partitioned the entire of Africa on the paper. This is how the paper partition happened. And that's why we have all these straight lines and all these we are having on the map of Africa. Understood? So because of the paper partition, these all have due to European colonial powers, we had these straight lines. Clear? So we have seen the colonial history, we have seen the colonial exploitation so far in the map of Africa. What else to cover, guys? Yes, now we have to see. Now look at the country Egypt. Egypt is a very important country, right? Egypt, of course, it has the Egyptian civilization. जो Egyptian civilization थी, one of the oldest civilization बोलते हैं इजिप्ट की, ठीक है? So Egypt is a very important country. The capital city is Cairo. Please make it up, mark it up. We have Cairo as the capital city of Egypt. So you have to remember, at least if you can, you have to remember the city of Algeria. Capital is Algiers. Tunis is the capital of Tunisia. Tripoli is the capital of Libya. And Rabat is the capital of Morocco. At least try to remember these 5 capitals. They are important. So Cairo is the capital of Egypt. Egypt is very important because it has this great Suez Canal with itself. So we have the Suez Canal. I'm sure you guys know the history of Suez Canal. Yes, it's a very important topic. And Suez Canal today is one of the busiest trade route. Suez Canal is one of the busiest trade route. But do you guys know, we had seen lots of troubles, lots of problems because of the Suez Canal. You guys know that? Though it is today one of the busiest trade route, but do you know, we have seen so many crises related to this region. See, this Suez Canal, actually the whole concept was to reduce the distance from, if you want to reach from Europe to Asia. Earlier, they had to travel the whole of Africa, you see. So earlier, the European powers have to travel the whole of Africa. They had to take a big round through the Cape of Good Hope. So they had to travel from this whole area. They have to cover this Cape of Good Hope, and then they have to travel back, and then they could reach Asia and other parts. It was a very big kind of route, and that used to take a lot of days, effort, energy, money, everything used to be a lot of investments. So Europe actually opened, European powers actually constructed this canal in 1869. I think it got started. I think the project started in 1859 and it got completed, and it started on a commercial basis after 10 years, almost 1869. And thanks to this canal, this Suez Canal, Europeans need not to travel this big all through the Cape of Good Hope, and they could travel from Strait of Gibraltar. They could enter Mediterranean, Suez Canal, Red Sea, and then straight to the Indian subcontinent they could reach. So that's why it's a very important. It's a very important one. But actually the problem happens whenever we saw Egypt trying to nationalize that. So you should know about the Suez crisis. So Suez Canal is very important, and we are going to talk about the Suez crisis. It's a very important one, guys, because whenever we had seen a war between Israel and Arab powers, Arab-Israel wars, lot of problems happened whenever Egypt tried to chalk it, and since it is also very important chalk points, right? In your international relations, or you can say the world geopolitical setup, we have lots of chalk points. These important strategic points are called chalk points. So one such chalk point was Strait of Gibraltar. If you close it, entire trade will be affected in the world. If you simply block Suez Canal, everything will be blocked. the whole trade route will be impacted, right? You can see that. So it's a very, very important one, guys, because this Suez Canal, which we are seeing, actually connects the Mediterranean with the Red Sea. First thing that you should know from your prelims point of view, not from anything else, but at least from prelims point of view, you should know that it connects the Gulf, the Red Sea. It connects the Red Sea with the Mediterranean Sea, right? That two things you should know. So we also say that it is a Suez Canal only that it connects the western and eastern worlds. Actually, Suez Canal is considered to be culturally very important. It is also culturally important because it is believed that Suez Canal connects the western and the eastern worlds, and because of that, the Suez Canal is very important, right? So I'm going to discuss a little bit about the Suez crisis. It's like we have covered Arab Spring. It is also important for you to understand the importance. Why I'm saying it is a choke point. Why Suez Canal is so important. You can see you have the proof because in the past we have seen the political crisis that actually started because of the Suez Canal. So after the completion of the project, Suez Canal had a significant impact on the world trade despite the traffic through the waterway was below expectation in initial year, but from the very starting Suez Canal was used to be a very important geopolitical choke point. So meanwhile, financial problems linked with the construction of canal allowed British government to buy the stakes owned by Egyptian interest in 1875 to become major shareholder in Suez Canal Company, the company which constructed the Suez Canal. The British government actually bought lots of stake. So British was having a dominating hand on the rather than Egyptian more than Egypt. UK had the stakes in the Suez Canal. So the canal was actually built to the British economy as it provided shorter sea route to colonial and especially to the oil fields of the Persian Gulf. You see, we also have a Persian Gulf here. If you see that, this is the Persian Gulf, right? So the Persian Gulf is very important for the oil exploitations. So definitely, if you want to exploit the oil, you can come and do that through the Suez Canal. So that's why UK, because UK had a lot of interest in that area. So UK government spent a lot of money on that. Now, the British strengthened its control over Egypt in 1875 when the latter, like Egypt, went actually bankrupt, allowing the banks in the Europe to take control of the country financially. And as French and British continued their control over the country, Egypt used to be ruled by UK and France collectively. So it started resentment among the Egyptians. Of course, no country's citizens want other foreign powers to come and take the control, right? So this caused Britain to invade Egypt in 1882 because the people of the Egypt, they used to show the resentment. They were protesting. So UK actually had to invade Egypt to protect its interest. And UK was on a full swing that time. UK was all prepared. It was at its bloom when it comes to the colonial power. UK was British was a very powerful kingdom that at that time. So UK British actually invaded Egypt in 1882. So the Egypt remained virtually independent due to Anglo-Egyptian Treaty of 1936. Britain took complete control of the Suez Canal, and during the First World War, Britain announced Egypt as a protectorate and sent forces to protect the canal. Suez Canal was actually protected. It had to be protected because everyone knew that if you want to choke UK, you have to destroy the Suez Canal. So British, they announced Egypt as a protectorate, means if anyone touches Egypt, that will be considered as a war against Britain. So Britain, protectorate means which is protected by somewhere out from outside. So UK announced Egypt as protectorate and wanted to protect all and actually send forces to protect the Suez Canal. So, though the Anglo-Egyptian Treaty declared Egypt as sovereign state, Britain only agreed to withdraw its troops from Egypt in 1956. So, it almost took 20 years to UK to withdraw, and the only reason was Suez Canal. So, you can understand how important Suez Canal used to be. But the major political unrest linked to Suez Canal, which is very commonly known as the Suez Crisis, actually started in July 1956 after the withdrawal of British from that area, because British forces they went back in 1956. After that, the problem started when the Egyptian president, whose name was Abdel Nasser, nationalized the Suez Canal and closed the Straits of the Tehran. So the Egyptian president nationalized Suez Canal, and the decision resulted in invasion of Egypt by UK once again, France and Israel. It was only after intervention of United Nations the three forces withdrew Egypt, allowing the country to reopen the canal for commercial shipping. Because the moment nationalization happened of the Suez Canal, actually Egypt wanted to dominate that area. It blocked the canal, it blocked the Strait of Tiran, and that resulted in the invasion of Egypt, because Suez Canal was very important for all these European powers to have their interest in the Asian countries. And the political unrest, however, continued for a long time. And then again, the problem started in 1967 when we saw a 6 day war between Israel and Egypt. That time again, Egypt had to block the Suez Canal. And whenever there is a problem happens, and after, like in 1975, after Egypt reopened the Suez Canal after the peace talk with Israel. So whenever we had a problem, whenever Egypt faced any crisis, the very first thing that Egypt did all the time was the blocking of Suez Canal. So if by chance question comes on Suez crisis or geopolitical importance of Suez Canal, I think you can write it up. Correct, guys? Can you write the Suez Canal and Suez crisis? Now, if you have to mention in your exam Suez importance, you can mention. And if by chance question come on the chalk points, you can also very wonderfully you can point out the Suez crisis and all, right. So it's a very important one, guys, that we have just prepared. Guys, any doubt you can mention in the comment section box.